So the financial collapse or pandemic has gotten really bad and you've decided to get out of Dodge. You've had a pre-planned location you are bugging out to and your food and supplies staged at that location or a storage unit in the area. Great. But if you are leaving in a vehicle, don't forget to spend a good portion of the time scouring your house for anything you might possibly need and everything you can reasonably fit into your vehicle. I would put the highest priority on cleaning out my kitchen pantry and the fridge and taking every scrap of food that I could find, eating the refrigerated items first. Be careful when packing your vehicle that you don't have cases of food pressed up against the window where any passerby can see. Try not to stack supplies 4 feet high on your roof racks either, like you were headed out on safari. These are things that will draw unnecessary attention to your particular vehicle. Use a tarp or blanket to cover and hide your supplies. When fleeing by vehicle, the first thing I would do is make sure each member of my family had an easily accessible bug-out bag. Should you get stranded, find yourself boxed in on the freeway, or get held up by someone demanding the use of your vehicle, you need to have your primary survival supplies in a manageable pack that you can easily grab when ditching or surrendering your car. It's better to walk away unscathed from a standoff with a group of desperate people than to lose your life or family member over stuff. You can always scavenge, beg, or plead for replacement supplies, but you can never replace the life of a child or spouse that is lost in an unnecessary firefight. Hopefully you have followed my advice and your primary supplies are at your bug out location or safe location. It will make walking away from your extra household supplies a whole lot easier to stomach. I am not insinuating you leave your vehicle and extra supplies on a whim. If you can gain a tactical advantage and you are sure you can overwhelm your opponent easily, then do so. But don't take unnecessary risks over extra stuff. If the solar flare hits only a portion of the country, I would still bug out. If you read the Lloyd's of London report on a small solar flare hitting the Northeast, they still estimate power being out for as long as a year in most areas. Remember Katrina and how long it took the country to get aid to one city? Trying to get supplies to 40 million people in the Northeast would take 10 times as long and probably wouldn't be very successful. So you've established that the national grid is probably down. Now what? This is the worst case scenario, and it will likely be the end of the world as you know it within a few short days. Even if I have access to a running vehicle, personally, I would take the remainder of the first day trying to score extra supplies or acquire things that I never had the money or time to acquire beforehand. A lot of stores could still be open, taking cash, and most people aren't realizing the magnitude of what's going on the first day. Go to the mom and pop stores first, gas stations and mini marts, and barter with an employee or manager for as much food as you can. Try to get primarily canned food, but anything is better than nothing. Try and procure a grocery cart for each member of your family old enough to push it while you travel. The major looting of grocery stores will probably start within 3 to 4 days. Spend the rest of that first evening and night cataloging and prioritizing what you can fit into your grocery carts or bug out vehicle. Be sure to get a good night's sleep because you will need to head out at first light the next day, and that may be the last long night of sleep you get for a very long while. Let's talk about protection. This includes protection from the elements, as well as other people that may try and take what you have. As far as protection from the elements, make sure you dress in layers. Be sure to take an extra pair of socks and a fresh undershirt with you. In cold weather, do not go to bed with wet clothes, blankets, or a sleeping bag, as most insulating fabrics lose a majority of their insulation properties when wet. If you're going to be traveling, take a tent or tarp with you. Don't plan on sleeping under the stars. If the weather gets really serious, you may think to try and find a barn or vacant building to hold up for the night, like you've seen them do on The Walking Dead. Be very, very careful with that. If you absolutely have to take refuge from a monster storm, be sure you knock and be as non-threatening as possible and explain your intentions. Say something like, "Hey, I'm just trying to take shelter from the storm with my family. We don't mean any trouble. Do you mind if we crash in your barn?" Just be very careful. Even though no one answers at first, they may be just hiding and scared. You need to make sure that they don't perceive you as a threat. After protection from the weather, you need to consider protection from other people, and that means weapons. If you don't own a gun, make sure you at least carry some kind of weapon on you. You need to pretend you are the baddest mofo on the block. Puff up your chest, walk with a purpose, and stare them down like a professional boxer would. If you act timid or scared, you are portraying an easy target, and you are setting yourself up and your family to get ambushed. Again, make sure you get everything together the first night and start out at first light of the day 2. Traveling over the first 2 to 3 days after a grid down scenario should be relatively safe. Most people are just going to be confused or scared. If you try and stick it out at your house and realize 2 weeks later that things are 10 times worse than I'm describing they would be, you're screwed. If you're bugging out on foot, make sure you try and stay on major highways for the first couple of days for easiest travel and avoidance of the smaller cities along the way. Major highways tend to go through smaller hills, and you'll experience much less elevation gain and loss than secondary roads, making traveling by foot much easier and faster. Also, highways typically go over top and around smaller towns, which is what you want. Don't get off any exits or enter the towns for any reason. Your grocery carts full of supplies will definitely make you a target. If you cross paths with others on the highway after day 3, remember what I said. Don't engage in conversation. While traveling the first few days, be sure to find a good spot to camp well before dusk. If you wait until it's too late, you may end up on a section of highway that is too populated. You also want to have plenty of time to gather firewood, eat, set up camp, and be in your blankets just as it gets dark. You need to conserve your flashlight batteries for emergency use only. When your batteries run out, you have no more light. If you wait too long to leave town or it takes you longer to get to your bug out location, I would seriously consider traveling at night, but don't use your flashlight. Your night vision will adjust and you'll be just fine walking on the roads. A flashlight will just make you visible from a long way off to potential looters. Make sure you pick a campsite well out of sight from the road. Yes, I realize this means that you will have to pack your gear in and out to the highway from your grocery carts each and every morning and evening, but don't get lazy in this area. If someone traveling your road in the evening or at night smells a fire or hears you through the trees, you may end up with an unwanted guest eating your food, or worse yet, stealing it. I would even go as far as to take shifts throughout the night keeping watch. Keep an eye out for water while you travel. Never ever pass up a water source unless you are sure there is another one up the road. Don't wait till you run out before you start looking for a new water source. Also, don't conserve your water. The last thing you want to do is end up dehydrated. Don't forget to purify the water with drops of bleach or purification tablets. I would only utilize a fire if you really need to boil water, cook, or dry your clothes and sleeping bags. In those cases, I would build a fire as small as possible while it is still light out, letting it die down before dark. A fire can be seen from a long way off at night when it is pitch black out. These are some things I would consider when bugging out of a big city. Don't get sloppy or lazy, and don't hesitate in your actions. Be decisive and follow through. Your family members, especially small children, will probably be scared and worry at the circumstances you are entering. Being a voice of confidence and assurance will really help them through this stressful situation.